Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala ma ba'd. Jamaat Muslimin, respected viewers, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum jami'an aynama kuntum. Welcome to each and every single one of you, wherever you might be. This is our program, Palestine, the Holy Land. And today, the 17th of April, 2025, marks a specific day on our calendar. It marks Palestinian Prisoners' Day. And every year, on the 17th of April, we are reminded of the plight of Palestinians that are in detention. Many of them without charge, without trial. Overwhelming majority of them political prisoners. Many of them under what is called administrative detention. And I believe that in terms of the numbers, there is about 1 in 5 of all Palestinians that have spent some time in some sort of detention facility in Palestine under the brutal occupation of the Zionist state. First of all, what is Palestinian Prisoners' Day? Marked every year on April 17th, the event is dedicated to the centrality of prisoners to the Palestinian cause. Palestinian Prisoners' Day is commemorated every year on April 17th, a date approved by the Palestinian National Council in 1974. This is the first time that it was marked or approved by the Palestinian National Council in 1974 as a national day dedicated to the freedom of prisoners and support for their rights. Why was the 17th of April chosen? Because the 17th of April marks the release of a prisoner, Mahmoud Bakr Hijazi. Mahmoud Bakr Hijazi, in the first prisoner exchange between Palestinians and the Zionist state. In late March 2008, the 20th Arab Summit held in the Syrian capital, Damascus, approved the adoption of the day in all Arab countries in solidarity with Palestinian and Arab prisoners detained by the Zionist state. So not only is it a day that is recognized in Palestine, but in all Arab countries, and it should be all around the world. Humankind, it is time now, even though it is very late, but it is time now that every human being, those that are in touch with their humanity, that they stand up for the plight of the Palestinians. They stand up for their freedom from occupation and oppression, their freedom from torture and detention. And so today, inshallah ta'ala, we are also going to be marking this very significant day. But we shouldn't only be mindful of it on this day, but we should be mindful of it every day. Especially us as Muslims, where we believe that the Ummah is one body. مثل المؤمنين في التواضع وتراحمهم وتعاطفهم كمثل الجسد إذا اشتكى منه عضو تداعى سائر الجسد بالألم والحمى. The likeness of the believers. May Allah make us of the true believers. Ameen. The likeness of the believers in the love that they have for one another and the mercy and compassion that they show towards one another is the likeness of a single body. If one part of that body feels pain, then the whole body feels the pain and the fever with that part of the body. Another riwayah, if one part of that body feels pain, it keeps the whole body awake at night. Allahu Akbar. So it is something that we should be mindful of every day, and let us always share a dua. Let's make a dua. Let's make a prayer that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala release all those that have been wrongfully detained. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala release all those who are languishing in the prisons and detention centers of the Zionist state. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them their freedom and liberation and freedom for the Palestinian people as a whole. Do not forget, the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Ad-du'a fi dhahri ghaybi akhika mustajab." The dua that is made in the absence of your brother or your sister, that is indeed answered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even the du'as that they are making for themselves as oppressed people. What did the Prophet say, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He said, "Ittaqu da'wat al-mazlum fa innaha mustajaba walau ba'da hin walau kana kafiran wa alayhi kufru." Beware of the prayer of the oppressed person, because it is answered by Allah. لَيْسَ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ اللَّهِ حِجَابٌ. Another riwayah, there is no veil in between the prayer of the oppressed person and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even if it be after a while, even if the oppressed person be a disbeliever, وَعَلَيْهِ كُفْرُ, they will answer for their disbelief. But as long as they are being oppressed and they raise up their hands, indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لَا تَأْخُذُهُ سِنَةٌ وَلَا نَوْمٌ, neither slumber nor sleep overtakes him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all aware. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ غَافِلًا عَمَّا يَعْمَلُ الظَّالِمُونَ إِنَّمَا يُؤَخِّرُهُمْ لِيَوْمٍ تَشْخَصُ فِيهِ الْأَبْصَارُ. Do not think for one moment that Allah is unaware of what the oppressors are doing. Allah is only delaying their punishment for a day when their necks will be stiffened and their eyes will be bulging out of fear. For God Almighty, the God of Abraham, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the meantime, Allah has given the oppressor respite. Like the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Inna Allah la yumli lidh-dhalim hatta idha akhadahu lam yuflithu." Allah gives respite to the oppressor. He gives him rope, just enough rope to hang himself. He gives him scope. Hy gee vir hom draad, soos ons sê in Afrikaans. Allah gives respite to the oppressor, but when he takes him, there is no escaping. There is no getting away from the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And dhulum, dhulumatun yawm al-qiyamah. Oppression on this earth is dhulumat, is darknesses on the day of judgment. It's a boomerang. It's going to come back. It's going to hit the person. In actual fact, it is said there are two sins that a person will be punished for in this world before they are punished in the next world. And that is uquq al-walidain, mistreatment of parents, and dhulm, oppression. So let us make a dua, let's make a prayer for the release of all prisoners, of all those who have been wrongfully and unjustly detained and imprisoned in Palestine. And for unjust detention, we can make that dua for everybody around the world. Let all those who have been unjustly detained, let them be released. Let them be freed. لا تظلمن إذا ما كنت مقتدرا فالظلم ترجع قباه إلى الندم تنام عيناك والمظلوم منتبه يدعو عليك وعين الله لم تنم. The poet says, do not oppress if you cannot bear the consequences of your oppression, for indeed the consequences of oppression end up with bitter regret. Your eyes go to sleep at night as the oppressor, while the oppressed person is awake, cursing you, and the eye of God never sleeps. وَعَيْنُ اللَّهِ لَمْ تَنَمِ. Neither slumber nor sleep overtake him. Jalla fi'ula. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So today we mark Palestinian Prisoners' Day, and according to the Palestinian Commission for Detainees and Ex-Detainees, and I'm taking these statistics from an article that was published on let me just get this right, 17th of April 2023. So this is before the 7th of October. I just want you to get an understanding of the number of detainees before the 7th of October and the number of detainees now. So 17th of April 2023, when this article was published, it says here that according to the Palestinian Commission for Detainees and Ex-Detainees, 4,900 prisoners are now being detained in Israel in the Zionist state, including 31 women and 160 children. Also included are approximately 1,000 prisoners placed under administrative detention, which means that they are held without trial and any evidence against them is withheld from them. So that's 4,900 prisoners, including 31 women, 160 children, and approximately 1,000 prisoners placed under administrative detention, which means they are held without trial and any evidence against them is withheld from them. This is 17th of April 2023, before the 7th of October. There are also more than 20 prisoners who were arrested prior to the signing of the Oslo Accords between Israel and the Palestinian Liberation Organization in 1993. The longest serving one, Mohammed Attous, has been behind bars since 1985. Palestinians have long criticized Israel for the conditions in its prisons. According to the Commission, 236 people have died in Israeli prisons since 1967, with hundreds of others dying after their release from diseases that struck them while they were incarcerated. The suffering of sick detainees is among the main humanitarian concerns, with more than 700 prisoners afflicted by various diseases, including at least 24 who have cancer and are in need of intensive health care. Inside the prisons, human rights groups and prisoners' organizations say the conditions inside Israeli facilities are harsh. And by the way, this is before, if I'm not mistaken, before Itamar Ben-Gvir became the Minister of Security. And that includes being in charge of the prisons. And he made it even worse. With regards to the timeline, I stand to be corrected, but as far as I know, this is before he took that position as Minister of Security. They cite the denial of visits, psychological and physical torture, and medical negligence, with sick prisoners unable to receive proper treatment. In addition, the policy of solitary confinement has escalated significantly since 2021, with approximately 35 Palestinian prisoners now in solitary, including sick ones suffering from chronic disease. The Israeli Prison Service has in the past defended its treatment of Palestinian prisoners, saying its policies are fully legal. Well, we can see now that fully legal may be according to Israeli law, but certainly not legal according to international law. Israeli authorities continue to ban family visits for some prisoners, with a particular focus on ones from Gaza. Prisoner protests over the course of February and until March the 22nd, Palestinian prisoners carried out a series of protests against Israeli prison policies after a new set of measures were announced by far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. There, it has answered my own question. And like I said, I stand to be corrected. And he was already elected as National Security Minister, and he is the one that announced a new set of harsh measures, making the already harsh measures even harsher. The measures heavily restricted the lives of Palestinians in Israeli prisons, including by limiting the amount of water they can use, the hours they can shower, and their access to bread. The protest eventually ended with the detainees reached an agreement with the Israeli prison service. Source Al Jazeera, and that is as of 17th of April 2023. Now, how has it changed since then? How has it changed since then? We are now 2 years later. And our article from the 17th of April 2023 was written by Maram Humaid. Maram Humaid. She is the one who wrote the article on the 17th of April 2023. And our article for 2025 has been written by Muhammad Hussein and Muhammad Haddad. Muhammad Hussein and Muhammad Haddad, 17th of April 2025. So again, beginning of the article just makes mention of Palestinian Prisoners' Day, the commemoration thereof, to highlight the plight of those held in Israeli jails and their struggle for freedom against Israel's continued occupation of their land. Again, the day marks the 1974 release of Mahmoud Bakr Hijazi, the first Palestinian freed in a prisoner swap, and it was later designated to honor all Palestinian prisoners and highlight Israel's ongoing detention of Palestinians and violation of their rights. Now, going from 17th of April 2023 to now 17th of April 2025, how many were in 2023? 4,900. There are currently, this is according to 17th of April 2025, nearly 10,000 Palestinians held in Israeli jails in Israel and the occupied territory, according to prisoners' rights group Ad-Damir. To Palestinians, they are political prisoners, and I'm reading that in the transliteration. I don't know if it is, it could be Ad-Damir, which means the conscience, Ad-Damir. I think it is an Arabic word that has been transliterated as Ad-Damir, but I know it is with a dad, Ad-Damir. To Palestinians, they are political prisoners who must be freed. Right, so nearly 10,000 Palestinians are in Israeli custody, including some 3,500 administrative detainees held without charge or trial. So from 4,900 to 10,000, and from 1,000 to 3,500 in such a short space of time. So 9,900 are political prisoners held in Israeli prisons, and 3,498 administrative detainees held without charge. 400 children. 400 children and 27 women. Let's go to our statistics as we took them. The statistics that were taken as of 17th of April 2023. I just want to get that exactly right. So 350 children, most of them from Jerusalem, and 40 women and girls. 350 children and 40 women and girls. That has now gone up to 400 children. 400 children. And I'm not exactly sure on the statistic of the women. Administrative detainees, including women and children, can be held by the military for renewable 6-month periods based on secret evidence that neither the detainee nor their lawyer is allowed to see. So this is just pertaining to those in administrative detention. 400 are children, 27 are women, 299 of the total number are serving life sentences. 400 child prisoners, Ahmad Manasra's case. Israel is the only country in the world that tries children in military courts, often denying them basic rights. According to Defense for Children Palestine, about 500 to 700 Palestinian children are detained and prosecuted in the Israeli military court system each year, some as young as 12 years old. The most common charge is throwing stones, a crime punishable under military law by up to 20 years in prison. Allahu Akbar. Currently, 400 Palestinian children remain in Israeli prisons. Most are in pre-trial detention and have not been convicted of any offense. One of the most harrowing child prisoner cases is that of Ahmad Manassara, who was arrested at the age of 13, brutally interrogated, and then sentenced. In actual fact, Al Jazeera did a piece on their news channel. You can perhaps look that up on YouTube. After spending more than 9 years behind bars, Ahmad Manassara was released from an Israeli prison on April the 10th, 2025, just a week ago. Despite suffering from severe mental health issues during his imprisonment, his repeated requests for early release were denied. You know, something I see so many Western commentators coming to the realization, even the Pope himself, is the level of cruelty of the occupation. The level of cruelty towards the weak and vulnerable. I mean, cruelty towards anybody is abhorrent. But especially when you're speaking about cruelty towards children. It's part of our fitrah to feel a sense of compassion and mercy and empathy for children. Even animals have it, called altruism. But it seems to be absent when it comes to the Zionist occupation. 13-year-old Ahmad was with his cousin Hassan, who allegedly stabbed 2 Israeli settlers near an Israeli settlement in occupied East Jerusalem. Hassan, 15, was shot and killed by an Israeli civilian. Ahmad was attacked by an Israeli mob and rammed by a car, suffering fractures to his skull and internal bleeding. That was in 2015. 2016, because they could not sentence him until he turned 14, Israeli authorities held Ahmad until 2016, when he was sentenced to 12 years in prison, later reduced to 9.5 years. He was charged with attempted murder, despite the court accepting that he had not participated in any attack. An external doctor was allowed to visit Ahmad for the first time in 2021. Can you imagine that? That's 5 years later. 5 years after he was sentenced. An external doctor was allowed to visit. The psychiatrist from Doctors Without Borders reported Nasra suffers from schizophrenia. Allahu Akbar. Allahumma shfiya. Allahumma shfi. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala heal him. In 2022, an Israeli court dropped the terrorism charges against Ahmad. He continued to be held in solitary confinement. Can you imagine that? Further worsening his mental health. 2025, released at age 23 after serving more than 9 years. That was on the 10th of April that he was released. And you can see in the piece that was filmed by Al Jazeera, you can see the shocking condition of this young man. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa min wala wa ba'd. Muslimin, respected viewers, once again, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to our program Palestine, the Holy Land. And today we are marking Palestinian Prisoners' Day, 17th of April, 2025. And Palestinian prisoners have doubled since October the 7th, 2023. It says here that the number of Palestinian political prisoners doubled, rising from 5,250 to nearly 10,000 that are languishing in Zionist prisons and detention centers. Let's get some details about that. So, as of October 2023, there were 5,250 political prisoners, and as of April 2025, 9,900 political prisoners. 1 Palestinian freed, 15 detained. Look at this. Since October the 7th, Israel has detained about 30,000 Palestinians. During the prisoner captive exchanges with the resistance, Israel has released just more than 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. That means for every person released, 15 others were apprehended. Just, digest the words that I am saying. What did they say? For every person released during the two ceasefires, 15 others were apprehended. During the most recent ceasefire exchange earlier this year, 739 Palestinians from Gaza were freed. That's out of 15,000 that had been detained. While in the occupied West Bank, 652 were released, but nearly 14,500 have been detained. So 15,000 detained from Gaza, 739 were released. And 14,500 detained in the West Bank, 652 have been released. Since October the 7th, Israel has detained approximately 30,000. I'm just taking this from the chart now. During two ceasefire deals with the resistance, Israel released just more than 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. That means for every person released, 15 others were apprehended. Shocking. Absolutely shocking. Now they give more detailed numbers here. 29,500 Palestinians detained in the occupied West Bank and Gaza since October the 7th, 2023. 1,793 Palestinians released between January the 22nd and February the 26th, 2025 in ceasefire exchange deals. And 240 Palestinians released between November 24th and November 30th. So take it like this. 240 Palestinians released between November 24th and November 30th, 2023. And 1,793 Palestinians released between January 22nd and February 26th, 2025 in the ceasefire exchange deal. But during the nearly 2-month ceasefire earlier this year, Israel released 1,793, while the resistance freed 38 Israeli captives, including 8 bodies. The majority of those released were from Gaza, with 739 freed, 337 from North Gaza, 227 from Gaza City, 151 from Khan Yunis. Some of again, they're using the word war. Whenever I see Hamas, I'm going to say the resistance. Whenever I see the word war or conflict, I will say the genocide. Some of the genocide's hardest hit areas. In the occupied West Bank, at least 652 prisoners were released, with most coming from Ramallah, Habroon or Khalil, and Nablus. Ramallah 118, Hebron 111, and Nablus 79. I'm just showing the swap here. First it was 90, again the language. I must use the same language. If they're going to say hostages for the Israelis, they must say hostages for the Palestinians, not prisoners for Palestinians and captives for the Israelis. So if you want to say prisoners, prisoners for both, captives, captives for both, hostages, hostages for both. So 3 hostages released, 3 Israeli hostages released for 90 Palestinian hostages. That was January the 19th, 2025. January the 25th, 4 Israeli hostages for 200 Palestinian hostages. January 30th, 8 Israeli hostages for 110 Palestinian hostages. February the 1st, 3 Israeli hostages for 183 Palestinian hostages. February the 8th, 3 Israeli hostages for 183, again, Palestinian hostages. 3 Israeli hostages February the 15th for 369 Palestinian hostages. And on February the 20th, there were 4 bodies and four bodies, and then February 22nd there were another 6 hostages. It doesn't show exactly. Yeah, Israel delayed the release. On what happened on February the 22nd is they handed over 6. They handed over 6 Israeli hostages, and then they delayed the release of the 620 Palestinian hostages. And then that happened on February the 26th. Another 4 Israeli hostages were released, and then 642 Palestinian hostages were also released. Listen to this now. 1 million Palestinians detained since 1967. Israel's detention policies have deeply affected Palestinian life for decades. According to the Palestinian Commission of Detainees and Ex-Detainees Affairs, since 1967, Israeli occupation forces have detained an estimated 1 million Palestinians, or approximately 20% of the Palestinian population. Statistically, this means 1 out of every 5 Palestinians have been imprisoned at some point in their life. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. For many families, arrest has become an inevitability. This systemic practice has fragmented communities, perpetuated cycles of trauma, and generated widespread resentment. As Israel's arrest campaign continues, many Palestinians fear that mass imprisonment is not just a byproduct of occupation, but a deliberate tool of control. Well, as we mentioned yesterday, this is all part of the wider plan, part of the bigger picture, which is making life unbearable for the Palestinians, that eventually, as Ben Gurion said in 48, that they will have no other choice except to flee, to run away, to be ethnically cleansed from their land, because that's exactly what it boils down to. It's ethnic cleansing, it's a war crime, it's a crime against humanity, it is unjust, it is cruel, and this dehumanization mechanism or engine, as I called it the other day, the engine that is driving this Zionist project of ethnic cleansing is the dehumanization of the Palestinian people, treating them as Untermenschen, just like the Jews were persecuted in Europe and so many millions of them exterminated in the Holocaust. When we look at the Nazi machine of extermination, it was Übermenschen and Untermenschen, and not just the Jews, the Roma gypsies, even the Poles were considered to be subhuman, and therefore being dehumanized. As Franz Stengel, the commandant of Treblinka, said, dehumanizing made it easier to kill them. And the same thing is happening in Palestine. So it's not just a byproduct of occupation, but a deliberate tool of control. For the thousands currently behind bars, freedom remains uncertain, just as it has for generations before them. Again, 1 in 5, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And that brings us to an end of that article. Inshallah, for the remainder of our program, we are just going to do, and we are going to conclude the live updates as we have for the last 2 weeks. We've just been doing some updates of current events, especially considering that we were away for a whole month during the month of Ramadan. We might have been physically absent in terms of talking about Palestine, but every day and every night, I'm sure every single one of you were thinking of our brothers and sisters in Palestine and making dua for them. And inshallah, those du'as are answered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, walau ba'da hin, even if it be after even if it be after a while. So, before we conclude our program, let us do the latest live updates. Number one, man dies in Israeli jail as Palestinians mark Prisoners' Day. A 20-year-old man has died in an Israeli prison as Palestinians mark Prisoners' Day with marches across the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem. Medical sources told Al Jazeera that at least 35 people have been killed in Israeli attacks on Gaza since early on Wednesday, and more devastating strikes have been reported in recent hours. The United Nations said an estimated 500,000 people have been newly displaced or uprooted once more in Gaza since the Zionist state broke the ceasefire with the resistance on March the 18th. Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz said his country's policy is clear, he says, and preventing all humanitarian aid from entering Gaza as a tool to pressure the resistance. Well, what is this? Just another war crime. Just another crime against humanity. Just another act of cruelty and barbarity and savagery. Gaza's health ministry says at least 51,065 Palestinians have been confirmed killed. And of course, that is besides the 14,000 that are missing. So at least 65,000. And according to the Lancet, those killed directly and indirectly between 180 and 200,000. They estimate. That's beside the 116,505 wounded since the genocide began 18 months ago. The Gaza government media office updated its death toll, saying thousands of people missing under the rubble are presumed dead. ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون. Do not say of those who have been slain in Allah's path that they are dead. Nay, they are alive, but you perceive it not. Right. Here are some more live updates. Israel did not abide by Gaza ceasefire deal. The Qatari Emir, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, said Israel had failed to respect the ceasefire agreement in Gaza as he met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. As you know, we reached an agreement months ago, but unfortunately Israel did not abide by this agreement. They didn't want to go to the second phase of the agreement, said the ruler of Qatar, a key mediator of the deal. After months of lengthy negotiations, Hamas and Israel agreed in January to a three-phase ceasefire plan, but on March 18th, Israel resumed its bombing of the enclave, saying it was in response to the Palestinian group refusal to release all remaining captives. And that is a lie. That is a blatant lie. However, it was Israel that had presented new and tougher demands, changing the terms of the deal. Israel wanted the release of all captives without committing to a permanent end to the onslaught and without committing to the withdrawal of all Israeli troops from Gaza. Two key aspects that should have been discussed in phase 2 according to the original agreement. Another live update with regards to the situation on the ground with regards to food and aid, or food aid. Palestinians line up for a hot meal in Nusayrat refugee camp. Oh, it's unbelievable. Absolutely heart-wrenching to see these brothers and sisters of ours that are literally starving and having to queue for hours with little pots and buckets to get some food to keep themselves alive. As of 54 minutes ago, an Israeli attack on a tent camp wipes out an entire Palestinian family. Imagine that. Even tents are being targeted. Refugees in tents Their tents are being incinerated, they're being burnt alive. You know what temperature these bombs, they've got a type of plastic explosive in them that burns at about 3,500 degrees Celsius. 3,500 degrees Celsius. Just imagine that. Tariq Abu Azzoum, he says the destruction of the vast majority of residential infrastructure in the city of Khan Yunis has forced many families to live in makeshift tents and open air encampments under trees, open areas and streets. Many have taken to cemeteries as the last haven to sleep and set up their makeshift tents. Well, we know they're not even safe in cemeteries because I think at one stage the Zionists had dug up about 16 different cemeteries in the strip, in the Gaza Strip. Many have taken to cemeteries as the last haven to sleep and set up their makeshift tents. The Israeli military yesterday even struck a makeshift tent camp in Khan Yunis, which was designated as a safe humanitarian zone. This attack wiped out an entire family. 10 civilians were killed in the strike as the fire engulfed the area. Children were burnt alive as they were not able to be rescued in time because they were living inside plastic and nylon tents that could easily ignite, leaving no chance for them to escape. Who does this sort of thing? What kind of savage, cruel, brutal monster attacks people? People who are seeking refuge. People who have been literally in the last 18 months moving from pillar to post, running to protect their families, to save their children. How do these monsters, how do they sleep at night? Whether it be the pilot who is flying the F-35, or the drone operator, the quadcopter operator, the tank driver, or the one who is shelling from the tank. How do they sleep at night? Where is their basic human conscience that every human being is endowed with? All we can say is La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There is no power or might except that which belongeth to the Almighty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the God of Abraham. And there will be a reckoning. There will be a reckoning. اعمل ما شئت كما تدين تدان. Do whatever you like, said the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What you do will be done unto you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ مُخْلِفَ وَعْدِهِ رُسُلًا إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ ذُو انتقام يوم تبدل الأرض غير الأرض والسماوات وبرزوا لله الواحد القهار ترى المجرمين يومئذ مقرنين بالأصفاد سرابيلهم من قطران وتغشى وجوههم النار ليجزي الله كل نفس ما كسبت إن الله سريع الحساب. Do not think for one moment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will break his promise to his messengers. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is almighty, most capable of taking retribution. The day when this earth will be exchanged for another earth, and these heavens will be exchanged for other heavens. And mankind will be brought out to appear before the one, the compeller, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On that day you will see the criminals. مقرنين بالأصفاد. They will be chained up. They'll be chained up. سرابيلهم من قطران. The clothing will be made of fuel. The clothing will be made of fuel. You get some plastics nowadays, literally plastic, in fact I've seen them in the shop, tracksuits, that if you smell the tracksuit, it smells like, literally smells like petrol. And they incinerated this Palestinian family in one of these plastic tents, nylon tents. What you do will be done unto you. On the day of judgment, those same criminals that inflicted this monstrous act upon the innocent Palestinian family, and now it is tens of thousands that have been killed. Every single one of those pilots, every single one of those drone operators, every single one of those tank shell operators, etc., etc. They're going to have to come in the courtroom of Allah. ترى المجرمين يومئذ مقرنين بالأصفاد سرابيلهم من قطران. You'll see the criminals on that day, they'll be chained up and their clothing will be made of fuel. And that fuel will be set alight. وَتَغْشَى وَجُوهُمُ النَّارِ. And that fire will be engulfing their faces. See what white phosphorus does to the human flesh? Because all it needs is oxygen to burn. And even when it gets into the body, it continues to burn right through. It can burn right through bones. Can you imagine the pain, the excruciating pain, or being incinerated in one of these plastic bombs, 3,500 degrees Celsius, incinerated. لِيَجْزِيَ اللَّهُ كُلَّ نَفْسٍ مَا كَسَبَتْ. In order that everybody shall get what they have earned. Everybody will get what is due to them. Indeed, Allah is most swift in taking account. Children were burned alive as they were not able to be rescued in time because they were living inside plastic and nylon tents that could easily ignite, leaving no chance for them to escape. We also received more distressing reports from medical teams operating in Nasser Hospital, saying that the city of Khan Yunis continues to be bombarded, and the vast majority of the people who arrived at the hospital are suffering from severe wounds and burns. Allah does not sleep. Neither slumber nor sleep overtake. And there will be a reckoning. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cause us to witness the end of the suffering and the liberation of the Holy Land, liberation of the people of Palestine, and grant us to pray in Masjid al-Aqsa and it is liberated and consecrated, Ya Rabbil Alameen. That brings us to the end of our updates, and inshallah ta'ala when I see you again, we are going to revisit some historical aspects, look at the context and what brought us to where we are today, and continue to speak about what we must continue to do, inshallah, whereby this can come to an end sooner than later, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Al-Wahid al-Ahad, Al-Fard al-Samad, alladhi lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. I leave you all in the protection of Allah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.